it's Belinda from My Style Journey. This video is going to be a little bit different than the usual format. I'm just going to be speaking about my mother. She passed away on the 15th of November, and the day that this video goes live I usually post a styling video, but I'm going to switch it around this week and I'm going to post my styling video on Friday. And I just want to speak from my heart and speak to you a little bit about my mom. I just want to talk briefly about the actual death experience. On the Saturday before she passed away, she had woken up with a hoarse voice. And I said to her, "Is her throat sore?" But it was quite useless to ask her those kind of questions because she did have Alzheimer's, so she would never answer appropriately. Anyway, we gave her some paracetamol, and the carer who was taking care of her, she bathed my mother that evening because my mother had a little bit of a fever, and just before she went to sleep we gave her some more paracetamol just to make sure that the fever wouldn't bother her through the night. And on the Sunday morning the carer called me at about 10:30 and she said, come and pop in and see your mom. And she gave me no clue of what I was going to walk into. I think she was maybe a little bit disturbed or distressed about it, but my mother was in a coma. And that day was it's just etched in my memory. She basically slipped in and out of a coma from the Monday up until about Thursday morning, 3:45. And Gladys, her caregiver, said to me that then she went into a restful sleep. She was definitely in a full coma. And up until then we were able to give her little sips of water and little bits of pureed food. At times, obviously not large amounts of food, it wasn't enough to sustain her. But we didn't want her to be parched and we didn't want her to be starved. And on Thursday, I just knew something was different. My aunt, her only surviving sister, there were 6 siblings, was here with me from the Tuesday, and I was supposed to take her back home on Thursday, and both of us just said to each other, listen, we're not going to, I said to her, I'm not going to take you home, and she said to me she doesn't want to go home. She feels that the end is close. And my mom was very peaceful. It was incredibly peaceful. So we lay her on her side. She'd been lying on her back for a few hours, and we lay her on her side. Although she only weighed about 30 odd kilograms, she didn't have a bed sore. The caregiver had taken excellent care of her. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful moment. I came into the room on Thursday morning and the caregiver looked exhausted. We have a camera in the flatlet where I can see what's going on at any time with my mom, and I had seen in the morning when I woke up that there were 23 movement alerts. So that means that the caregiver had gotten up approximately 23 times for my mother through the night. And when I spoke to her, she said my mother was just restless up until about 3:45, and then she went into a very restful sleep. My sister lives in New Zealand, and I messaged the family, I messaged everyone. I'm on 3 family groups, so it's my own immediate family, my brothers and sisters and my dad, and then my mother's extended family. And I messaged all the groups and I said, I think my mom is passing on. And my aunt fielded the calls. She took most of the calls as they came, and I could just lay with my mother. And my sister sent me a voice note which I played to my mom, where she just thanked my mom for being the most amazing mother ever. And her 3 children who live in New Zealand with her all sent my mom a message, which was just so beautiful. It was just so timeless and precious. And then her son, her middle child, is a boy, and he said to me, Auntie B, the family call me Auntie B, my nieces and nephews, Auntie B, please play Oma. That's what we call my mum. What the grandchildren call my mum. it's from Afrikaans heritage, and they said, please tell Oma that I love her, and then please play her blue suede shoes from Elvis, because he knew that Elvis was her favourite singer when she was young. And I found blue suede shoes on YouTube, and I lay with my one arm behind her head holding her hand and my other arm around her holding her hand, and I lay on her, along her back, and my aunt was coming in and out all the time. The caregiver had given her some time just to go and have some breakfast and just to relax, because she'd had quite a rough night. And my mum passed away. She took her last breath at 29 minutes past 10. And it was just the most beautiful thing. She died to this song. And I always say, I wonder if Elvis didn't meet her on the other side and they danced into eternity. I don't know what happens after we die. I can only imagine that it must be good. But I just trust that her passing, I believe her passing was peaceful. I could see that in her. Her face was peaceful. Her body was weak, but she was peaceful. But I'm sharing so much of this all to be able to tell you that my mother did not live her fulfilled life. I believe that she fulfilled her purpose on earth, but I believe that she missed out on so much. And this is why I believe that. I feel that I need to speak about this. I feel that I need to share a little bit about her life and about how amazing she is. She was an incredible mother, a mother who was filled with love, and she just gave very selflessly of her life. We were 4 children, and although we never ever had a good relationship with one another, each of us in our own way had quite a great relationship with my mom. And I fear for what's going to happen to our family, because she was the glue that held us together. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's about 5 months ago, but we had been seeing the signs of the last 2 years. I apologize if you hear some banging. We're doing some renovations. My mother used to live in the flatlet, and we're now renovating the flatlets. My son is going to be moving in there. So there's quite a lot of banging. I do apologize for that. Although my mother was diagnosed very recently, we had seen the signs over the past 2 years. We were aware that when we were in conversation with her, she would repeat herself. She would tell us a story and then repeat herself with as much vigor and fervor as she had the first time. And initially I would say, "Mom, you've already told that story." And then she would feel embarrassed, but towards the end it just became impossible to have a full conversation with her, and we realized that there was desperately something wrong. She was also becoming quite frail, and she was losing her appetite, she was losing weight, and this past Christmas, the Christmas of 2017, my dad actually joined us that Christmas. The previous year he didn't want to come with, and he stayed at their home, which is about 2 hours away. And he came with, and I think that he somehow knew something was up and something wasn't okay. But the reason I'm sharing this story for you is I really want to honor my mother's life. I want people to know that she was an incredible human being. Despite her issues, despite her shortcomings, despite her codependency, and this was something that I didn't know anything about until last year. I had been away with some friends, and one of the friends and myself had a falling out, which we'd had about 8 times or so over our almost 35 years of friendship. Which happens, you disagree and you can't come to a resolution. But it always ended in the same pattern of me running after her and begging for forgiveness and trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. And the more time I'd spent working on me and loving me and becoming a more transcended, does that sound spiritually arrogant, but a different being, a person who really knew her worth, and I didn't need her validation anymore. And I think that with this past argument or fight, I don't want to talk about this at all, this is not what I want to speak about, but during this fight I realized something. One of the other friends in my close group of friends said to me, it might be possible that you're suffering, I'm suffering with codependency. Maybe you should just research it a little bit and see if you fit the profile. So I did that, and lo and behold, I checked just about every single box, and that was quite scary for me because it isn't who I wanted myself to be, but it was very obvious to me that I was codependent. So a big thing for me in moving away from codependency was leaving quite a few institutions within a very short space of time. I left a job that I'd done for 21 years. I'd nursed for 21 years and I left that, and I started a little bookstore. I left the education system. My son was struggling with a learning disability, and I didn't want him to be labelled. And I just knew from having my two girls go through school quite easily that he wasn't going to be able to go through the system the way that they did. So I took him out and I homeschooled him. And then I left the church that I've been a part of since I was 5 years old. I'd grown up a Christian in a Christian church. And I left organised religion. I didn't leave the faith, but I left the organised religion, the church, which was huge for me. It was massive. It caused me a huge loss amongst friends and family who didn't understand what I was doing. And then finally I left my husband of 14 years. And that was the most freeing, the most scary thing I've ever done, but the most freeing thing I've ever done. And my husband now has been a great proponent of my independence. He has really pushed me in ways that I didn't think were possible. 2 years ago I went on a holiday to the UK and to Turkey on my own. And if I look back on that holiday, it had to have been the most amazing holiday that I ever did. And I nearly didn't go because I was supposed to stay with a family member of my husband's for a period of the holiday, and her father ended up passing away, and he lived in South Africa, and she came home for the funeral, and I almost cancelled it because I thought, what am I going to do in London for 4 or 5 days on my own? Hello. It was amazing. It was such an amazing time. It was just beautiful. It was more a spiritual holiday for me than anything else, but it was incredible. It was just so incredible. So finding out that I still have codependency issues last year did something big on the inside of me, and I started to do a lot of research, and I found out that my mom has been the codependent and my dad the narcissist. And growing up in this dysfunctional home, it causes the children to become one or the other. Children who come from that kind of dysfunctional home do not grow up being functional. They do not grow up being able to be balanced adults. They have to do so much more work to get to that place of loving themselves and being okay with who they are. And we are 4 children. And I realized that there's a reason why the 4 of us were never close, because the work of the narcissist is to cause friction amongst the children so that he can always, or she can always gain the upper hand and have power. So if they can cause friction between brother and sister, and the brothers and sisters aren't cohesive, then they have more power. And I began to see the patterns in our family, and especially in my mom's life. And it was too late by that time, because my mom was already losing so much of her mind. We couldn't really have conversations with her by, I would say, towards the end of last year. She was anxious and struggling in social circumstances and social situations. Anyway, I'm rambling on about a lot of stuff, and all I actually want to say is this. My mother never knew real unconditional love as an adult in her marriage to my father. His love was extremely conditional, as are all narcissists. If you do things that they want, they will love you. If you behave in the way that they think that you should, you will get a better response from them. It is all about them. Love is never unconditional. It's never, you are an amazing person and whatever you bring to the table is good and okay. It's always about them. I've come to realize that, and I've come to know that there's nothing that I can do that can ever win my father's love. In June this year, I went to Greece with my 2 birth daughters and my granddaughter, and while I was in Greece, against my husband's wishes, my father phoned me and said, I'm not coping with your mother, please do something. I told my dad, I'm in Greece, I'm on holiday, I will sort this out when I get home. And my husband had desperately asked him, please don't bother Belinda, she needs this break, she hasn't had a break, she's been looking after her granddaughter, just give her this time. Even though she's with her granddaughter on holiday, she's on a holiday, please give her this time. And my father didn't honour that. He phoned me while I was on the holiday and he said he's not coping with my mom. Even though my husband and I had been on at him for about the last 6 to 8 months, or the previous 6 to 8 months, to get a caregiver in to help him through the day with my mom, because we suspected he wasn't coping. This is not a video to bash my father. This is not a video to say that my father is a terrible person. It is what it is. He comes from a very abusive background. He comes from an abusive home. And although he would never admit that, not in 1,000 years, I've heard things now from one of my aunts, and my dad had a terrible upbringing. He had a very hard upbringing, and there wasn't much love in his upbringing. And if you haven't been taught love, how can you give love? So I thank God for my mother, because she loved from such a pure place, from such a whole place, and she always loved us. She never judged us. She never shunned us. I'm sharing all of this with you today just to say this, that this journey to self-love, this journey to accepting myself, this journey to really loving who I am on the inside has taken me 50 years. But it has been a journey that is so worth it. Honestly, if I can tell anybody who's come out of a screwed up kind of family to spend some time getting to know who you are and just loving yourself, just being kind to yourself, just being gentle on yourself, just loving yourself, I would say that over and over and over again. But what I want to get to is that I wanted to give my mom love. I wanted her to be loved, and not to be anxious, not to feel that she's in the way, not to feel like if she doesn't remember something that she's going to be judged. She was just so anxious in the last few months when we used to visit her. Jan and I and my husband visited her over the last 8 months before I brought her home. Every 3rd weekend we used to make it, and my parents live about 2 hours away from us, and we would go there every 3rd weekend just to make sure that she was okay. And we could see the decline. It was happening fast. It was a rapid decline, and I kept saying to my dad, can we not help you? But I think all the time, and I'm not judging him, he just didn't have the capacity to love her. He didn't have the capacity to be compassionate, to have that care for somebody else. He can only have that for himself. So our decision to take my mum in, I actually wanted my mum and dad to come and stay with us because we have a flatlet in our home and in our garden, and I wanted to have them both close, and I thought we would be able to help my dad. But in the end it happened the way it should, and we managed to, my dad wouldn't come with, he said he's not interested in coming. I think my dad just didn't want to lose his independence. He's almost 80 and he lives alone now, and I just think he wasn't prepared to give that up just yet. And I'm not angry or upset with him about that. I think that it happened the way it was meant to happen, and the 4.5 months that my mom got to stay with us was incredible. Honestly, it felt so long because the disease is exhausting. It takes so much out of you, the carer. And we had a lady who came and lived with us, and she was sent from God. I swear that woman was an angel who's on this earth just to be in my mother's life. And she stayed with us, and I said to her, I'll give her every second weekend off. And she said, no, I'll just take 1 weekend off a month. And eventually my dad came and helped me for that weekend. So my dad helped me out the last 2 times with my mum, which was a great help. I think he coped better with only seeing her once a month and having to spend that little bit of time with her. It was just better for him, it was easier. Anyway, long story short, my mother passed away almost 2 weeks ago. This video is going to go up on her Memorial Day. And I just want to honour her. I just want to honour her life. I want to say thank you for your unselfish ways, your selfless love. My mother put us first, her 4 children, and I felt that. I knew that. I always knew that. I always knew that she put us above herself, and that is the fault of a codependent. They can't love themselves first and then love others. But it did teach me love, and I did feel loved by her always. I always knew she loved us. But right up until she passed away, she never got to the place of loving herself. And that to me is sad. But I want to remember her life, her huge heart. She had 10 grandchildren, and she has 3 step-grandchildren who she was amazing to. My 2 stepdaughters and my sister's stepson. My mother just accepted them and just loved them as if they were her own. So that's what I want to do today. I just want to honour her life, and I want to say thank you for being the love and the example of love that I could model my motherhood on, because you were an amazing mother, and I want the world to know that. Today I'm not going to beg you to subscribe. I'm not going to say that you have to watch this video or share it with a friend. Today really I just needed to say these things from my heart, and to just let my mother know in some cosmic way that she is an incredible human being, and I want to always make her proud.